Good morning. I hope that you have your cup of coffee and you are ready to dig into some good stuff. Today, I want to talk a little bit about dissatisfaction and discontentment. I think it's something that's really prevalent in our culture. I think it's something that we've all probably dealt with at one point or another. And it's definitely something that is more prevalent when our main method of contact with the rest of the world is social media. And so it's worth talking about this morning. But first, let's talk a little about this. Are you familiar with an ESPN highlight reel? Yeah? What's the ESPN highlight reel? Well, you got a bunch of guys sitting around talking about the best and the worst things that happened in last night's games, right? They're going to talk about the greatest pass or the best shot or the most amazing teamwork that they saw on display in whatever game they're talking about. They're talking about the best. But they're also going to talk about the worst. They're going to talk about the worst pass. They're going to talk about the shot that just missed or missed by a long shot. Or they're going to talk about the awkward fall, that klutzy moment that professional athlete had when they fell over, they did something wrong, or they made some sort of mistake. You know, the ESPN highlight reel doesn't talk about the normal. They don't show you videos of the normal, regular parts of the game. They show you the best and the worst. They show you the stuff that's going to keep you entertained. It's going to keep your attention locked onto it. Social media is a lot like the highlight reel. It's a lot like getting to see the best and the worst. Social media is a carefully cultivated snapshot of what people want to show you. And I know you know that up here, right? I'm not telling you anything new. This isn't rocket science. Social media is what people want to show the rest of the world. It is the moments that are absolutely the best, or the moments that are the funniest, or they are the ones that they're the most proud of, or for some people it's the silliest. It's the mistakes, the biggest mistake they made. But it's carefully cultivated. They're putting something out there that gives you a very particular picture of what their life is like or what's going on in their world. You know, social media isn't real life. It's not. Think about the people that take pictures of their food and they put their food up on social media. They don't put the dish they made that they messed up on, or the ones they weren't proud of, or the ones that, like, they don't take a picture of a Big Mac and French fries when they go get McDonald's or whatever. No, they take a picture of the healthiest, the most colorful, the carefully cultivated picture of their food. That's what they're proud of. That's what they're showing. But that's not how they eat every day or every meal. That's not what every meal looks like. Social media is not real. Not even the lighting is real. If I could show you how many people behind the scenes when they're putting things out on like YouTube channels for videos that they're doing, they have all sorts of lighting apparatuses around them to give them the best light. Even outside, they have all sorts of stuff set up to make that light hit them just in the right way. Or makeup. You know, people don't even look the same way they look on TV or on social media or on YouTube videos that they look in real life, because they have all sorts of time to do their hair the right way or put their makeup on the right way and make sure the lighting is just right and get those shadows like all that stuff is carefully cultivated. But it's something that it's like a trap we fall into because we don't think about it too much. We think about what we're seeing and we compare ourselves to what we're seeing all the time. There's this article from Psychology Today, and I'll put the link in with this video. So if you're someone who is interested, you can go ahead and read even more about this. But this article by Psychology Today is called The Comparison Trap. And in the beginning of it, it tells the story of this woman named Lisa who is extremely successful. I mean, she's got a great job, she's got a great family, she's got a great house, she lives in a beautiful city. She's beautiful, and her kids are beautiful, and she takes pictures of herself and pictures at her job, and she She takes pictures of herself when she's like at the market getting fresh fruit and fresh vegetables to take home to make that really beautiful meal. Everything is going for her. Her life looks amazing on social media. And at this point in the story, you think, oh, and they're going to tell us that really her life's not amazing. No, it really is pretty amazing. She really is beautiful. She has great kids, a great house, and a great life. But here's the thing. A person like Lisa, who's got everything going for them, she gets on social media. She posts her pictures. People like them or comment on them. And then she sees that person from high school going on like a missions trip, heading off to a foreign country to deal with the latest Ebola outbreak or something like that. And they put a post out on social media to say, I'm headed off to this country to help out in this way. And the comments that people write are things like, you're the most amazing person I know. And Lisa reads this and she goes, no one ever says that about me. And so Lisa, as amazing as her life is, as much as she has everything going from her, she's left feeling jealous and discontent and dissatisfied. And why in the world should Lisa ever feel jealous and discontent and dissatisfied? She's got so much going for her. It's because she's comparing herself to the people around her. This happens in spiritual world too, in church world too, right? We compare our church to other churches. You're not a pastor maybe, or maybe you are a pastor, but we get together, pastors do, and we talk and we share. And sometimes you'll get together with other pastors and the first question, like when you meet a new pastor at like a conference, they're like, oh, how big is your church? What's your facility like? What's the square footage? Like, silly questions, right? We compare our churches. When we get together and we talk, oh, I go to this church. Oh, you go to that church? What's your church like? We talk about the number of people that come. Oh, I've got 750 people that come. Oh, I have 50 people that come. And suddenly the guy who's got 50 coming feels somehow less than the one that's got 750 coming? Come on. We also compare styles, right? Like worship, like oh, you guys have a rock band, we have a choir, or we sing contemporary songs. Oh, you sing old songs. We compare those things. Oh, you guys have a fog machine? Whoa, a fog machine. But seriously, in the conversations when you're sitting around and you're talking about your church versus other people's churches, you're talking about these things. This is how you figure out, how does your church stack up against other churches? Oh, you guys have a gym. Yeah, my church doesn't have a gym. Or you talk about the pastor too. Like, I know this. I mean, how old's your pastor? How does he connect with the different demographics in your church? Is he funny? How knowledgeable is he? Like we ask all, like, this is how we rate our church compared to other churches. And what's gonna be the big comparison pretty soon is we're gonna be talking about how, oh, your church is meeting together again and mine isn't. So it's not just our church. We do this other really dangerous thing. We compare ourselves to other people. That's not good, right? I think about it. We sit in a Sunday school class and somebody's teaching and they're an amazing teacher, and we think to ourselves, oh my goodness, I just wish I could teach like that. Or we hear somebody pray in a service and we're like, oh, did you hear how articulate they are? Oh, I wish I could speak that well. Or we hear that there's a couple in the church that's paid for this new initiative or this new thing, and we're like, oh, they're so generous. I just wish I could give like that. Or there's the person who's like, they're off on the next missions trip. They go on mission trips all the time. They're headed off to that next place to help out that next group of people. And we're like, oh, they care about so much. I wish I could serve like that. Or you meet a really amazing leader, a person leading a ministry or something in the church, and you're like, oh, they lead so well. They just know, they take command in such a way. They know where all the pieces. I wish I was that kind of a leader. Or here's the one that always kills me when I hear it. Have you heard that person's testimony? Oh, it's such a good story. I mean, they really turned their whole lives around. You should hear what their life was like. And now it's so different. But my story, My story's so boring. I just wish my story was better. To hear anybody ever say, I wish my story was better, breaks my heart. This morning, I want to tell you a very short story from Mark chapter 10. We know this story as the rich young ruler, and it's the story about this rich young man who comes to Jesus, and he seems to have it all together. Everything. What more could you want than be this guy, right? And he's like, Jesus, what must I do to enter the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus says, well, you got to follow the commands. Do this, do this, do this. And the rich young ruler looks at him and says, I've done all of this since I was a young boy. Whoa, that's huge. I mean, just think about, go to Mark chapter 10 and read this passage. Jesus lists off a bunch of things that I'm sure that you and I have all failed at some point in our lives. And the rich young ruler is like, oh, I've done all those. I've kept those commands since I was a kid. And so I'm sure the disciples who are standing there watching this are like, dude, this guy's he's got it. He's nailed it. But Jesus looks at him then and says, okay, then take everything you have, everything you own, and give it to the poor. Then come and follow me. And the man looks at Jesus sadly and walks away. The disciples are standing there. They're left with Jesus. And they're essentially in this position where they have just watched the person who seems like they have everything together, everything going for them. Let's just pretend that we know this guy he's a good-looking guy, that he's young, right? So he's got his age going for him still. He is wealthy. He has kept all the commandments. He is knowledgeable in the commandments, and so he always kept all of them. And if this guy can't do whatever it takes to follow Jesus, then what hope do any of the disciples have in actually following Jesus? And what does Jesus say to them? He says this in Mark chapter 10, verse 27. Looking at them, Jesus said, with people it is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible with God. So Jesus in this moment when the disciples are like, well, who could possibly do what you're asking? And Jesus says yeah, it's easier for a person to get through, or for a camel to get through an eye of a needle than it is for a rich person to follow me. They're like, who in the world could possibly do this? And Jesus takes their attention and he doesn't say, well, act like that guy or don't act like that guy. He says, look to God. He takes their attention and says, everything that seems impossible with man is possible with God. And so their attention is suddenly on God and no longer on this rich young ruler, no longer on the fact that they feel like they don't compare, they can't add up. Jesus says, God is your example. You know what else Jesus says? Jesus says, come and follow me. Do what I do. Teach what I teach. Show people what I've shown you, because Jesus is God made flesh. And so Jesus doesn't just say God's the example. Jesus says, I'm the example. I'm the thing you should be seeking after. I'm the thing you should be looking at, not these other things. And so in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, Jesus gives this very famous sermon called the Sermon on the Mount. It's these 3 beautiful chapters. And in these chapters, Jesus goes over things like anger and murder, adultery, divorce, swearing, loving your enemies, giving to the needy, prayer, what else? Fasting, anxiety, judging others, good fruit, bad fruit, false teachers, and there's so much more in there. If there's a place that we're looking to find what we're called to, this is it. It's the Sermon on the Mount. Psychologists today would say, comparing is something that's a natural part of what we do. And so I'm not going to sit here and tell you, hey, stop comparing. That's not something that you should be doing. What I will do is say this. Stop comparing yourself to others. If you feel like you have to compare yourself to something, then compare yourself to the Sermon on the Mount. How are you doing at the things that the Sermon on the Mount talks about? And if there's an area there that you're struggling in, then keep working on it. Jesus says, all things that seem impossible to us are possible with my Father in heaven. And so he takes our attention, directs it to God. And so I want to do that this morning. Take your attention, direct it to God. If you're struggling with something in there, then take it to God. Trust in God. Work on it because it's not impossible. God's got you. You know, there's enough in the Sermon on the Mount for us to be working on. We don't need to look all around us to see, oh, I don't have this, or I don't look like that, or I could never do this other thing that that person's doing. There's enough right in the Sermon on the Mount for us to focus on. So let's focus there. Let's be a people that doesn't look elsewhere as to what we should be doing or how we measure up. Let's measure ourselves against the Sermon on the Mount. Let's measure ourselves against Jesus. And let's focus right here, okay? Because there's enough to work on right here. I don't need to go looking for other things to work on. There's enough to work on right here. So let's work on this. Because when we work on this, we're going to have something to offer the rest of the world. And you know what it's going to be? It's going to be a lot less of us and a lot more of Jesus. Let's do that together. Have a wonderful day.